Hey everyone, Warwick's here. Back with Halloween month as we continue on through video 3 of 4 for Halloween month specifically. I know we've done a few others this month and there's a few others still to come. I don't know if it's going to be in October or not, but November's kind of hard to do a theme for because there's no like Thanksgiving songs that I'm aware of at least. So what I think I'll do is I'll make November like individual project month where we get a lot of individual artists doing some different projects. So, for example, Marwin Amen did Heat Waves with Eric Holloway. I'll probably check that out. Um, I'll look over some other individual artist stuff. Like I know Peter Barber's got a new project fairly recently that I think is coming out that he's been working on. Or he's got one coming out soon-ish, from what I understand. But I'll check out other individual artists. I'll go check out like some of Home Free's individual stuff, things like that. So that's what I'm going to do for November. So for October, though, we got this. I know I'm going to do Tommy P's recent release to celebrate his new album, which I definitely recommend you go check out when I think it dropped yesterday, a couple days ago at this point as of recording. Anyways, I'll be doing that one later on this week. And then, of course, I have Oogie Boogie Man that I've already recorded, and I've just got it scheduled for upload as the last Halloween video for the month. Today, though, we're going to do something a little bit different. I know normally I do a cappella or stuff with very minimal instrumentation in the case of like Jeff. But today we're going to do Jonathan Young, who did the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, which is one of my favorite Disney-ish songs. I guess Sweeney Todd's Disney. Does Disney own that? I don't remember. But of course he's done in metal, which is not a genre of music I generally listen to a ton. Obviously when I was in high school, you listen to it all the time. I'm sure most of you listen to heavier music depending on when you were in high school. Yeah, I remember when Elvis was like the most controversial artist on the planet. Not that I wasn't alive, but my grandmother has told me stories and my parents have told me stories and stuff like that. So, or when like the Beatles were a big wide sensation, but also like people were like, oh, their music's too angry or too heavy or whatever the case may be. And like you listen to the Beatles now and you're like, this is practically elevator music compared to some of the stuff we've got today. Anyways, we're going to go over this. I've covered Jonathan Young once before in the Misty Mountains month back in July, I think is when that was, when he did his Misty Mountains cover back in 2014, which hit all the mid-2010s YouTube nostalgia for me. So go check that video out if you haven't already. I'll put a link up there. I'll try to put a card up there so that you can go check that out if you want to. If not, I have a whole playlist. Every time I upload one of these videos, I add it to a playlist of acapella reactions. So you can check out my playlist as well, which I'll also link up there. And you can check out any of the stuff that I've done reactions to in the past. If you're new to the channel, you can go back and see what I've done. If you're back to the channel and you just want to go back and rewatch some of my stuff, you can do that as well. For those of you that are new to the channel, I appreciate you very much for joining me. Welcome. I hope you enjoy yourself here. For those of you that are returning to the channel, welcome back. Quick background on me. I'm not a professional musician. I'm just a guy who loves music. Decided to start doing these videos inspired by the Bass Gang, inspired by some other creators that I started watching, getting into the acapella rabbit holes. Started this in June and still having fun doing it 4 months later, and I don't intend on stopping anytime soon. Little community is kind of built up around my acapella reaction videos and my reaction videos in general, and I love seeing all the comments, and like I learn something on every video because there are people subscribed to Patreons. There are people that just are much more technique oriented or note identification oriented, which are things that I am not strong at. That just teach me things every week in the comments, and I appreciate you guys greatly. So if you're new to the group, stick around, wait a couple of days after this video releases, you'll inevitably start seeing comments start coming in. And you get to see the wonderful people that watch and comment on my videos, and I appreciate all of you. Those of you that are back, welcome back. So I've never seen this video, so the format for this is going to be that I'm just going to watch the whole thing through. You're going to get my unfiltered reaction to everything. This is legitimately the first time I've watched it. And then we're going to rewind back to the beginning, and we're going to listen to it again, and that time I'm going to do on lots of pauses so I can talk about things that I think are really cool about the video or just things that I find interesting. So without further ado, let's get into the video, The Ballad of Sweeney Todd, metal cover by Jonathan Young. Obviously, we're going to start with the flashing lights warning. Those of you that have that type of sensitivity, please be careful. Please take care of yourself. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So as you could probably tell, Jonathan Young, very acquired taste, I think. If you're not already a fan of his, you're just not discovering him or whatever the case may be. He can be a little bit much in some cases with the music, but we've covered Jonathan Young, and he's very versatile. We've seen obviously with his Misty Mountains cover, he's been in the Wellerman's Misty Mountains as well, and he was in Centuries by the Bass King, which I also covered in June. I think it was the third video that I ever did on this channel. So, or for in terms of reaction videos. So, like, obviously he's got his versatility. Um, like I said, I love the Ballad of Sweeney Todd. I think it's a banger song. I absolutely enjoy it. This was a very interesting cover. Jonathan Young, usually his metal covers are very, very interesting in ways that you don't generally expect. And that keeps up here. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really, really cool, really interesting. You know, as a percussionist at heart, really enjoy the drum set in this video. I think that was really, really, really cool. His whoever does his drums for him is just a very talented individual, and I quite enjoy the stuff that they do. I've also, like, obviously I've heard a few other of his songs, including some of his originals. I love The Wolf Within, but like his Santiana Si Santi Metal is one of my favorites on his that the drums does in this, and this one I think from a drum perspective is going to be right up there. All right. So that's the end of the reaction. I think this is really cool. Like I said, it's very acquired taste. If you're not into metal as it is already, or into heavier music, even on a casual level, I think this is probably going to be a little bit of a turnoff for you. But I want to do something a little bit different on this channel this week. Try something a little bit different other than the sort of traditional, what's becoming the sort of traditional acapella music on this. So just something a little bit different. And so if you're here just for the reaction, that's the end of the video for you. 10 minutes. For those of you that are going to stick around and listen to some analysis, let's dive into it. So one thing I like right at the start with the guitar chords is that is the little doom 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 doom, that little, like, not the bass guitar, it's, you know, kind of guitar one, I guess, would be just those little like up down or down up chords, because that's relatively, if I'm remembering the original song correctly, there's a little bit of that as well, except obviously in the original it's much more orchestral type, where it's like doom 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 doom, and then we're getting into the song itself. So just really like that. We'll listen to it one more time. You can kind of hear that ding, 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 kind of like that. Really enjoyed that. Visually, one thing I will say about this kind of whole video is I don't know if it's either Jonathan or if it's the camera that they're using, but the use of shaky cam is definitely overdone in this video. It gets to the point of being a distraction, in my opinion. I think right here at the beginning, if he would have just gone completely steady and kind of done minimal shaky type movements, then I think it would have added the impact of the shake cam later on in the video, which we'll talk about from a visual perspective. But right off the start, like the shaky cam, or him being that jitters, but I think it's shaky cam, that technique is overdone from the very beginning. And I think that kind of, if you close your eyes, it doesn't take anything away, but if you're watching the video, I think it does. For those unfamiliar with Jonathan Young, he is actually a natural bass. And so that's why you hear some of those deeper notes in the backgrounds and stuff like that. We'll get to them when I hear them again. But he's very good, has a pretty good range, can get very low, and then also can get way up there with his, as you probably could hear in Centuries. You saw, if you go back and watch that, or if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You will see like the full scope of Jonathan Young's range in that video. He doesn't show it off here because he doesn't need to, the way that the Ballad of Sweeney Todd is sung in the original. He kind of copy and paste that with his own twist. So he's got a pretty good range, and that's why you're kind of seeing, and he shows it off a little bit here. But that's Jonathan Young in a nutshell. He just does a bunch of metal covers and then dips into a cappella work every now and then as well. So just in that little line right there, you kind of see he started off kind of in like this, I guess, middle baritone range, I guess I would call it. and then goes up a little bit, and then by the end of this line he's dropped down into like a higher bass range, so you could already see like the movement that he has in his range. Visually, I also like that he's really taking on the eccentricity of this, of kind of Sweeney Todd in general. The whole movie is just kind of like an eccentric, uh, over the topness to it that, you know, is kind of defined by a lot of Johnny Depp films. Strangely enough, not all of them, but a lot of them have this level of over the topness that is sometimes very blatant, like it is with like Pirates of the Caribbean and Sweeney Todd, and sometimes it's much more subtle, like Ed Wood and stuff like that, where there's like this, you could tell there's something that's really over the top about the movie, but it's kind of pushed against the background. What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I think, was another one off the top of my head that kind of does that. And then some of his voice work, like in Corpse Bride, obviously that's a Tim Burton film. We know what Tim Burton does as a film director. So him with his eyes being very wide like this, straight though, like I'll keep them straight as long as I can here, but very wide, very like head tilting like this, kind of gives off that aspect of manic, and kind of like that matches kind of the Sweeney Todd character itself. Like if you don't know the story of Sweeney Todd, first off, go watch the movie. It's very good in my opinion, one of my favorites, but also has this kind of like very underlying menace and manicness about it that really fits kind of like a, it's not horror, and it's kind of like almost a weird mix of campiness but sinisterness in the way, and Jonathan Noakes doing a really good job of matching that vibe with his facial expressions, with his movements, and with his eyes in particular. Yeah, showing off a bunch of different techniques there. So he got down into like, again with the Sweeney Todd, kind of getting that really wide open, kind of over accentuated O sound, and then Sweeney Todd kind of pulling back a lot in his vocal folds. Really, really cool stuff. Very accentuated T's, which I like. So again, we're kind of seeing him transition between different vocal types or techniques and stuff like that. And also his ranges, like you see him kind of drop down, and then he gets that really kind of pulled back, like almost henchman type voice, as I call it. I don't remember all the lyrics. Let's go back, like right here, you just listen to it. And then at the very end, he kind of adds like bass grit to it that makes it really, really cool. So in my opinion, with the shaky cam, like I mentioned, it's almost a distraction. I think it is a distraction in this video from a visual perspective. If he had started it like right here, you know, roughly a third of the way into the song, I think it has a much higher impact in terms of what he's trying to accomplish visually, where he's kind of pushing this manic. But remember, Sweeney Todd seemed very controlled on the surface in a lot of ways. And I think him kind of doing that in the beginning would have mimicked that a lot better until he gets into kind of the real manicness, which happens to Sweeney Todd over the course of the movie. Bass laugh, we like it. Him cutting himself out there for a second, I think, is a good way to break up the shaky cam distraction. It still doesn't do enough, in my opinion. I think if he had been steady all the way up to that, and then blacked himself, you know, cut back on the, you know, went to the black screen and then comes back in with the shaky cam, again, that's, I think, where the transition point should have happened. That gives it much more impact. You hear it, it's kind of subtle in the background. A lot of stuff going on in the background that's really cool beyond the instrumentation. He has a lot of background vocals that are kind of mimicking what he's singing in this chorus. on much different levels. I think one was very high, and then one was kind of into that mid low range, and you could hear it in the background on that kind of giving that real growl, that real like that real great growl that he's kind of known for in some ways, adds that real kind of rock grit to it. Really showing off a lot in the background, obviously in the foreground. Let's go back 10 seconds and we'll listen to it again. Yeah, it just adds a nice little bit of depth to the lyrics, which is, mostly him up front singing. Obviously the music, which probably was mixed a little bit too forward. I'd like to see it pushed back a little bit so we can get more of Jonathan, but it's his creative choice. This is kind of how he does his metal covers in general. So it's kind of expected from him. It's just not a mixing and mastering choice that I would have made personally. And again, I think here, if he would have transitioned back to a steady cam, it again kind of adds enough contrast. Obviously, he's doing a lot of work with body language. Like, I am not here to criticize the work that Jonathan is doing facially with his body. He's doing excellent work. It's just hard to appreciate it in a way because of the constant shakiness going on. I think if you would have interspersed a steady cam with a shaky cam, I think that would have done wonders for this video from a visual perspective. And it become a little less like right here, so to speak, with like your vision. It just feels like your vision's almost blurred, and I know that I don't need to, but I find myself wanting to like constantly blink, like a contact in my eye is not in correctly. For those of you that wear contacts, you know this feeling where you put it in and you're like doing this, trying to make sure it gets settled. It's not like sitting weird in your eye, and you kind of do this every now and then. I feel like I should be doing that throughout this video, just because the shakiness makes me feel like something is wrong with my vision, and as someone that has a lot of vision problems, I'm not a fan. For the record, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that from a creative perspective, that is not what I would do. Not my preference. I'm sure there's a lot of people out here that really like the shaky cam throughout the whole process. I think because it fits a really specific aesthetic that Jonathan does appeal to. It's just not my choice. Objectively, I understand why he's doing it. Subjectively, it's not my favorite. I love the way he does the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Emphasizing those T's gives it that a level of staccato-ness at the end of those words that just is a nice little diversion from everything else, where he's very much connecting everything. It's very legato in that regard. Not slow, but just it's all flowy, so to speak. And then adding just these little bit of staccato-ness is a nice little way to break up the lyrics a little bit, to make it have just enough of a contrast that you notice it, but it's not, again, distracting in a bad way. It doesn't take away from anything. Ooh, ton going on in that section, both musically and visually. From a non-vocal perspective, I really like that somewhat from a vocal perspective, but more from a musical perspective. I really enjoy the fact that his lyrics and his music were all in unison there. Again, enough of a little bit of a contrast and a little bit of a change that from an arrangement perspective, like it adds just like this nice little change of pace in the middle of a song that's kind of high paced. It's not slowed down because the tempo doesn't change, but it feels like it slows down almost when you throw everything in unison. So just a really, really nice choice from a visual perspective. All of his camera cuts, and then of course at the very end, the rapid fire camera changes lining up with the 16th note run that the drum set was doing. Just a really cool visual. I really like that aspect from it from a visual perspective. Again, biased to percussion because I was a drummer in high school. I've always loved percussion. One of my favorite things on the face of the earth to listen to is a good drum line and a good drummer. So keep in mind bias speaking here in that regard. But the fact that it lines up like that and he took the time to video edit it that way is probably was pretty intensive work, I imagine. But at the same time, it pays off very, very well. I think it's from a visual perspective, outside of it, as you can tell, his freaking facial work, which is just masterful. This whole song, from a video editing perspective, that right there to me is probably the most impressive thing done from an editing perspective, because it probably was the thing that took the longest to line up with the music. B, it also has the biggest reward because it just adds this level of impact that almost nothing else in this song does. Not to say the song isn't impactful, because it is. It's a heavy metal song. It's going to have impact. It's just by its very nature. But this section escalates that impact into a way that feels kind of memorable. I'm probably going to walk away from this video remembering the stupid drum run that is going on, along with the fact that he did an insane amount of editing work to make his face line up with every single drum note that was hit. Just very, very good stuff. Shout outs to whoever edited this video. I don't know if it was Jonathan or someone else. We'll check here in just a little bit. But whoever did the editing work on that and stuff like that, I give you the shout outs. And again, doing it here again in a way that isn't overdone, but it just gives this, again, it just gives this impact that nothing else in the song does it for me like that. It just, God, I love it. And again, we're getting those background voices that kind of screaming at the end on the background that just adds that depth and flavor to it in terms of a vocal technique type thing. Call and response, you know how much I love you. He uses it perfectly here. And you can sound again, he's kind of up in the middle chest range, and then here when he does the response, he drops down into bass, which is just chef's kiss. But call and response used to perfection, I think, here. Very, very well done. Adds again a little bit of color to the song in terms of just different musical techniques being shown off and a different genre of music that you wouldn't, it's not that you wouldn't expect it in, but it's just nice to, and anytime you can hear it across all genres of music used well, as someone that is a huge fan of call and response musical technique, you won me. You got me. And again, mixing his kind of sidekick, you wouldn't want us to give it away, kind of dropping in down there at the end with the bass. Just really nice interspersing techniques, show like incredible voice control to be able to do stuff like that. And then the laugh at the end in combination with, again, the 30-second note drum riff. Again, editor. Fantastic stuff. Who edited this? Did he show it? Video editing by Bo Kennedy. So Bo Kennedy, all the props to the level of work that you probably had to put into this. That is amazing stuff that you did there. So, shout outs to 16 in Mono and M. Young, who did the additional orchestra and sound effects, guitars by 16 in Mono. Shout outs to you guys for helping out with instrumentation on this. I think you guys did a great job with your instrumentation. Didn't really talk a lot about the music side of things because, I mean, it's metal music. It's not that it's not complicated, because it is, but I'm not a connoisseur enough in metal music to feel like I could point out things that are really interesting. And to a beginner, it sounds almost stereotypical. I'm sure if you're, quote unquote, a metalhead, then you're going to be able to really dive into it a lot more and kind of pick out all the cool things for that. So if anyone knows a creator that dived into this song musically, not lyrically, but musically, point them out to me because I'd love to go watch it because I would like to see someone break this down from a musical perspective. So, but that's the end of this one, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, something very different. Just wanted to kind of cleanse the palate from acapella stuff. But don't worry, we're getting back into it next week with Oogie Boogie Man. We're gonna do Tommy P's Halloween videos coming out. I know Marwin's in the midst of doing one, so we'll probably cover that this month. And then of course November we're going to be doing a bunch of individual projects as November theme, and then of course December will be of course Christmas theme. We've already got God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen on that list. I'll probably ask again in November, but shout out to some Christmas stuff. If you got home free, I'd like to see some Pentatonics Christmas stuff. So if you are a Pentatonics fan and you have a favorite Christmas song that they did, post it in the comments and then remind me come November, because I'll probably forget because we've got a lot of stuff going on in between that. But I'll ask again. But I want to do something with Pentatonics because I want to make January probably a Pentatonics month, a group that my dad is a big fan of actually, but I haven't really gotten into the catalog of Pentatonics, and so I'd like to be able to do that kicking off 2023 with something completely brand new, a group that I know of but I've never listened to. So I'd love to be able to do that. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for sticking around if you're at this 29-minute mark or so. So I'll just end it here. Like, share, subscribe. You know all the drill. 89% of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. That's the analytics talking. So yeah, subscribe if you find yourself watching these videos a lot. So until the next video, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. You have fun. You're listening to great music. And I'll see you all in the next video.